Once again, here we are at Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 29. And it shall come to pass when the Lord your God has brought you in unto the land whither you go to possess it, that you shall put the blessing upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Notes, Mount Gerizim is also referred to as the Mount of Blessing, and the curse upon the Mount Ebal, this is called the Mount of Evil. Now the two mountains named stand opposite to each other, with a valley between, about 200 yards abroad at the widest part, in which stood the town of Shechem. They were selected for the purpose mentioned, doubtless because of their relative position, and probably also because they stand in the center of the land, both from the north to the south and from the east to the west. Now, incidentally, Gerizim, which is the Mount of Blessing, was and is fertile and smooth. Evil is quite the opposite, barren and rugged and just kind of tough looking. As stated, they make excellent object lessons, which the Lord actually intended. Verse 30. Are they not on the other side Jordan, by the way where the sun goes down, in the land of the Canaanites, which dwell in the campaign, over against Gilgal, beside the plains of Moreh? For you shall pass over Jordan to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God gives you, and you shall possess it and dwell therein. And you shall observe to do all the statutes and judgments which I set before you this day. Chapter 12. These are the statutes and the judgments which you shall observe to do in the land which the Lord God of your fathers gives you, to possess it all the days that you live upon the earth. You shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which you shall possess serve their gods, upon the high mountains and upon the hills and under every green tree. Notes. All places of idol worship, whenever they were found, were to be totally and completely destroyed when Israel entered the land. Verse 3. And you shall overthrow their altars, and break their pillars, and burn their groves with fire. And you shall hew down the graven images of their gods, and destroy the names of them out of that place. Notes. They were to completely destroy everything having even a remote connection with idolatry. Verse 4. You shall not do so unto the Lord your God. Notes. Now, Israel was not to build altars as did the heathen, but was to have one designated place. Verse 5. But unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name there, even unto his habitation shall you seek, and there you shall come. Notes. The one center for national worship foreshadowed Calvary, to which in spirit all must go in order to meet God and to worship him. One center for worship secured purity of doctrine and national unity. Verse 6. And there you shall bring your burnt offerings and your sacrifices and your tithes, and heave offerings of your hand, and your vows and your freewill offerings, and the firstlings of your herds and of your flocks. And there you shall eat before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice in all that you put your hand into, you and your households, wherein the Lord your God has blessed you. Notes. Now, if it is to be noticed, the Lord at this time did not tell Israel as to where that place would be. Verse 8. You shall not do after all the things that we do here this day, every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes. For you are not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance which the Lord your God gives you. Notes. Upon entering Canaan, the Lord would bring about a more structured government, I guess you could say, and it will be based upon the law. Well, obviously, that's what government really is, but verse 10. But when you go over Jordan and dwell in the land which the Lord your God gives you to inherit, and when he gives you the rest from all your enemies round about, so that you dwell in safety, Then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. There you shall bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings and your sacrifices, your tithes, and the heave offerings of your hand, and all your choice vows which you vow unto the Lord. Verse 12. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons and your daughters and your men servants and your maidservants, and the Levite that is within your gates, for as much as he has no part nor inheritance with you. Notes, all of this is represented, repeatedly presented as a scene of rejoicing, and even the slaves were to have their share in this particular joy. And please keep in mind that the Levites are not just simply being brushed aside. Their inheritance pretty much was the tabernacle. Verse 13. Take heed to yourself that you offer not your burnt offerings in every place that you see, but in the place which the Lord shall choose in one of your tribes, there you shall offer your burnt offerings, and there you shall do all that I command. Notes. That's my dog scratching. Well, while there were definitely set places in Israel where the tabernacle was pitched, still it was not until the temple was built by Solomon that a permanent place was established, which was about 500 years from the time of Moses. Verse 15. Notwithstanding, you may kill and eat flesh in all your gates, whatsoever your soul does lust after, according to the blessings of the Lord your God, which he has given you. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, as of the roebuck and as of the hart. Note, they could feel free to kill and eat that which they desired, but it must not be a sacrifice. Verse 16. Only you shall not eat the blood. You shall pour it upon the earth as water. Notes, the life of the flesh is in the blood, and Jesus would shed his blood in order to obtain salvation for Adam's fallen race. Now, consequently, the blood is never to be eaten and is to be handled in a certain way as proclaimed here. It must be poured out. Verse 17. You may not eat within your gates the tithe of your corn, or of your wine, or of your oil, or of the firstlings of your herds, or of your flock, nor any of your vows which you have vowed, nor your free will offerings, or your heave offerings of your hand. Notes, now these had to do with the peace offerings and such, or anything dedicated basically to God himself. It's his, well, it's going to stay his. But you must eat them before the Lord your God in the place which the Lord your God shall choose, you and your son and your daughter and your manservant and your maidservant and the Levite that is within your gates, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God in all that you put your hands unto. Notes, the Lord would appoint a place which would be where the tabernacle was located, and then later on the temple, which would be situated in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, the base of it is still there. If the offering entailed a feast, which all peace offerings did, then it must be eaten at the designated place. And that place was where the altar was, which of course typifies Calvary. Now this tells us that all restoration, fellowship, rejoicing, in fact, all things which come from the Lord are made possible by Christ, of which the sacrifice is typified, and the means of the cross, which is typified by the altar. And we must pick up in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 19. Thank you, and God bless.